Hola, me chico. Um, how y'all doing? Hope everybody's doing well. AJ3, how you doing, brother? Sound like you was here before I was. Like you was waiting on me. Pretty cool, huh? All right. We're gonna talk about the Mr. McMahon documentary. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to spend most of this time talking about Nikki Bella and her husband and this very bad, terrible story that's been floating around the last couple of hours. It's very not good, but we don't have any details yet. But details are trickling in little by little. We're going to go through a couple of articles, kind of gossipy sites, you know, but gossip sites are the ones that kind of jump on this kind of celebrity stuff anyway. So we're stuck with this for a little while until we get something more definitive. We're going to give people a minute to come in. Until then, I'm glad to say that I'm glad to be here. I thank everybody for showing up, everybody who do show up. Um, I do kind of want to riff on something before we get into these stories. I've been trying to figure out a way to do different kinds of thumbnails, and I'm not good at graphic design, but I want to do it myself because I want to actually try to do things myself. So I've been I've been trying a lot of different sites to work on my thumbnails, and none of them are any good. So if you know any good thumbnails or any good sites so I can do thumbnails, let me know. They don't require a lot of intensive work. Ah, yes, Tessa Blanchard. We can talk about that too. Uh, I can throw Tessa on the barbecue real quick. I know her and the issue with her and Chelsea Green. I kind of ignored it because it's not really saying anything new. We already knew Tessa Blanchard was down bad, but maybe some people didn't know. But I'll give my thoughts on that. Now that you mention it, I'll have to go and find an article about it to give me a launching point to talk off of. But we can talk about Tessa Blanchard. Um, what did I think of the Crow movie? I didn't see it. Uh, I don't I don't think too many people went and saw it. I heard it was pretty empty in those spots. WG Field, Prince Ali, how you guys doing? You guys stopping by, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who stopped by. Everybody stopping by to say hello. Um, Jesse Ventura's interview with what's his name, Chris Van Vliet. I got into like 5 minutes in and couldn't take no more. Just turned it off. I don't know why. I just couldn't take no more. I just didn't want to hear anymore, I guess. Okay, so here's the this is the video that Tessa Blanchard that got put out about Tessa. Well, I shouldn't say put out about her. I should say it's a video of her talking. Um, I need to find Chelsea Green's tweet. And then we're gonna get started. I'm not a big fan of Tyrese, not really, but um, I've seen clips of his thing on on the Breakfast Club when he took off his $23 watch. That joint was hilarious. That was that was mad entertaining. I gotta say that was some really entertaining shit right there, brother. You can't beat that. You can't beat that one. What is okay? What's happened? Why is it so hard to find a damn tweet? I can't find the damn thing anywhere. Did she delete it? Maybe that's why it's so hard to find. Oh wait, I think Ringside News probably got it. So I guess we got three. So we got it. They got wait, all of this stuff is Tessa comments. Oh, okay. That I don't think this is Chelsea's entire comment. I think she said more than that. We'll see. I think so many people feel bad for Tessa, but they forget that she just recently got kicked out of WoW like a year or two ago, which was her basically her last chance, and that's it. I don't see how you can give her another chance after this. I don't know, but I guess after hell, the Chelsea Greens, not the Chelsea Green story, but the Tessa Blanchard story is the first goddamn story I talked about on this channel. So this story is as old as this channel is. So the Tessa Blanchard story is as old as the channel itself. Um, so if you go back way back into the archives of my very first video, it was about Tessa Blanchard. But anyway, let's get into this. We 5 minutes in now. Let's get into this nightmare scenario for Nikki Bella, and which I know is it's not funny, you know, and I haven't read anything that made me laugh. I'm going to so this is awful, but this story dropped at 11 in the morning, but it didn't seem to gain any traction until this afternoon. But this guy's name is Artem Chigvintsev. Artem Chigvintsev. Is he like Ukrainian or something? Okay. So he was on Dancing with the Stars, apparently. He was arrested for domestic battery. The victim in the case has asked for total confidentiality. It says deputies responded to a domestic violence call at a location in the town of Yountville shortly before 10 a.m. Thursday. An arrest was made at the scene, and injuries were reportedly involved. So Artem was booked in Napa County Jail on Thursday morning on a felony domestic violence charge, according to online jail records. So of course, they admit that they have no idea what the arrest or the circumstances were, but they were coming up on their 2-year. Wait, they only been married 2 years? Yeah, they got married. They only got married 2 years ago. Wow. But they have a son who is 4, Mateo. I thought they had other kids too. They only got the one kid. Okay, so People magazine continues the story, and let's go into this. It says Tim and Nikki Garcia celebrated their second wedding anniversary 2 days before the Dancing with the Stars pro was arrested. I'm not reading the tweets and stuff that people put in here just to fill space. That's what all this crap is. Just establishing their relationship. It says the anniversary post came 2 days before Chigvintsev was arrested on Thursday, August 29th. According to intake records obtained by People, the booking code indicates Chigvintsev was charged with corporal injury to spouse, and he was given $25,000 bail, though it remains unclear at this time, given the charge, Garcia is presumably the spouse in question. People has reached out to the reps for Chingvisev and Garcia for comment. Well, clearly they're not going to comment on this. This seems nonsensical for her to comment on this right now. It says that Garcia revealed in November 2020 that the pair had begun couples counseling following the birth of their son. So they've been having issues for several years. They started dating in 2019. Apparently, they had a baby almost immediately. In November, they started having couples counseling. They weren't even married yet. That's awful. They were needing couples counseling before they even married. It's shortly after their son was born, they said. Oh, this is awful. Okay. There was another article on this. Uh, hmm. Oh, so they were on Dancing with the Stars together. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Wait a minute. Here's some stuff. It says exactly 1 year after the birth of the son, Garcia shared an update on their relationship, saying they had overcome their rough patch. She explained on the Bella's podcast that it was hard when both she and her son were apart from Chingvisev for a long time on American Got Talent Extreme. Teo goes everywhere with Mama, she said. That's where he's comfortable. That's where he does best. And it's hard on Artem. And it's been hard on me too, not to have my man in my bed for over 6 or 7 weeks. It's been really hard on us. She admitted, saying a little rocky for a bit, but they have had 2 sexy FaceTimes and were stronger than ever. So, sexy FaceTimes? Huh. I guess they got over this because they got married 2 years later. This is no good. This is no good. Nikki Bella is she has she, this is an interesting situation because if I remember correctly, and I'm looking this up right now, wasn't Nikki Bella the one that was raped before in the past? Yeah, it says here that she was raped twice as a teenager. Um, Apparently, she wrote in her book that she had been raped twice as a teenager. Uh, she revealed this in 2020. It says that when she was 15 years old, she thought the guy was a friend and he drugged her. Um, oh no, she was raped by a fellow college student. And then when she was 16, she was raped again by being drugged by a college age man. So, um, wow. She says, when that happened to me, I felt so ashamed and blamed myself. And that's what made me want to keep it such a secret. And keeping that a secret and blaming myself, I started to lose my confidence. I started to disrespect myself. And then the relationships I got into at a young age, I let other people disrespect me and felt like that's okay. That's what I deserve. She says, I was like that for a long time. I would go to therapy on and off. Looking at it now, I'm like, oh, Nicole, I wish you would have let that go at a young age. So much would have changed for you. This is awful. Like she has been through quite a bit, you know. This is difficult. This is difficult. And I remember reading about this, and as soon as I saw that her husband had gotten arrested, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. It's like, damn, what kind of luck does Nikki Bella have? She's been raped. I didn't know she was raped twice. I thought she was raped once. But apparently she was raped twice, and now she's a DV victim. This is this is not good. She is well, and until we know more about the situation, I don't want to wring the guy out to dry, because sometimes when the police are called, somebody's got to go to jail, right? Now they said that there is some injuries. That's going to be a big hang up because if he injured her in any way, then he deserves to be in jail. And DV is one of the worst fucking things you can do, bro. It's not the worst thing. Top 10? No. Well, yeah, maybe top 10, maybe top 15. worst things you could do, but we don't know the situation. You know, too often we think we know, we don't know. All I can say is this is Nikki Bella is in a really tough state of affairs. Her father-in-law just got busted, sex trafficking, cheating on her mom, and now this. And the kid, of course, is the true victim. Robert Jr. in 2005 is correct. This the kid is actually the victim here. And I am interested in what the hell a sexy FaceTime is, but I don't have the audacity to ask. I'm trying to be professional and not trip over these kinds of things. Like when I see that they've been having relationship issues for 5 years straight, it's like you've been having relationship issues your whole relationship. You know? No, people don't talk about Stone Cold beating up Deborah. Not until the kids find out that it happened. People think Stone Cold Steve Austin is all warm and cuddly. He ain't reached the levels of Hulk Hogan or Vince McMahon or just yesterday, Jerry the King Lawler. I think that if you're expecting people to be sparkling individuals, it's like somebody's gonna find out one day that Booker T robbed the Wendy's, and they're gonna bring it up like it just happened yesterday or something like that. Look, I get it, man. There's youths that don't know things. You know, you can't blame people for not knowing stuff. But I knew about the Jerry Lawler thing. As soon as I got the internet, I pretty much found out about the Jerry Lawler thing. But most people have not done too much digging on the subject. They just read the Bixen Span, Deadspin piece, or they maybe have read a fraction of that, which is what I saw floating around yesterday on the internet. Somebody had screen grabbed a section of Bixen Span's Deadspin article on Jerry Lawler, and that led to Jerry Lawler being on Front Street. But this thing was 30 years ago, man. It was 30 years ago. There's not much you can do at this point. And, well, that's if you think he's guilty. There's not much you can do. If you think he's innocent, then, well, but again, it's one of those things where because there was no trial, and sometimes I'm starting to think that not having a trial is actually worse than being put on trial. Because if the case is dropped due to lack of evidence or whatever the case may have been, the witnesses don't want to testify or whatever, then it lives forever as he was never brought to justice. He never beat the case. It's like, well, the state, the one who dropped the case, he didn't drop it. The state dropped it, and they're the ones who were bringing it. So, but it's those kind of weird things that you just got to learn to deal with if you cover criminal matters and crimes and stuff like this. You got to deal with people who don't know that much about it. They have knee-jerk reactions, and then they just kind of let it sit. So there's nothing you could do about it. I know what FaceTime is. It's not a question of what that is. The question is, what's her definition of sexy FaceTimes? Like, were they doing like she got a camera? Because she said she had the kid with her. You know, so look, like she was waiting for the baby to go to bed, and they were mutually masturbating or something. That would be the only thing that you could do through FaceTime. Like she was looking at his penis, like, let me look at it. That's humorous. That's humorous. Robert Jr. says, I think that's why Jerry got fired just a couple months ago from WWE because I found out yesterday, but what he did 30 years ago. No, that's not why he got released from WWE. He got released because he's really old and he couldn't travel. The dude had like a bunch of heart attacks. He can't do anything. You know, he can barely travel. Jerry Lawler is very old. He's very old. So No, I don't think it had anything to do with what happened, over 30 years ago. I don't think it had anything to do with that. But a lot of people went through and they started finding with people making jokes about it online, especially with like various people making fun of Jerry Lawler's penchant for liking young women. But it's unfortunate. I don't want to get into that though because that's a whole thing. Also, Variety magazine has now done an article on Artem. It says he was booked in Napa County Jail. We know that on a felony domestic violence charge, which makes it quote illegal to injure a spouse, cohabitant, or fellow parent in an act of domestic violence. His bail was posted at $25,000. Okay, so there's three options: there's spouse, cohabitant, or fellow parent. I don't know what that means. Fellow parent. So the police put out a statement saying, "We always want to protect our victims. We understand why people want to know the name, but we're treating it like any other domestic violence case." That makes sense. That makes sense. And most people think that now it's most people think it's Nikki Bella that was the victim. I think that's the best presumption to have. She's been very quiet on this, so I think if it wasn't her, she would have said that. But then again, I don't think she would want to implicate her husband and to have done anything, or it'll come out in the wash, I guess. Um, but the situation just occurred. I think that people, even and by just occurred, I don't mean like it occurred 10 minutes ago, but it occurred earlier today. It's going to take some time before anybody feels comfortable talking about it. And it seems to me like this might end up being a charge that gets dropped. So don't be surprised if this just goes away after a while, you know? So, but you never can tell. Maybe this might stick and then all the information comes flooding out. We'll see. We'll see. But if it's Nikki, I certainly hope she leaves them. I would hate for her to, him to get arrested for domestic violence and then her still be there. Bella's husband laid hands on her. I don't blame him. She must be annoying. Even if she is annoying, it's California, bro. You for sure going to jail. For sure going to jail. But then again, domestic violence is one of those things like harassment where you have to get the details. Because if she got in his face and he shoved her, technically that's domestic violence. When we think about domestic violence, we think somebody just, bitch, this chicken is cold, and smacking people in the face. And it's not always like that. Sometimes he might have been trying to get away, or she might have been yelling at him and he had to, push her or whatever to separate the two of them or whatever. We don't know what happened. Maybe she threw 6 lamps at him and he finally responded and then he hurt her and that was it. We don't know what the situation was. I think it was Drew McIntyre that was fired for domestic violence in WWE, and he was the victim. So because he had, I think he had gotten into it, and his wife at the time had like threw something at him. She had hit him also, but she like threw stuff at him. I think it also happened to Rhino too, where his wife or girlfriend or whatever was throwing stuff at him, and it came out that he was involved in a domestic incident and all that kind of stuff. Rich Swann is another one. He got released from WWE over domestic violence. So it's a major issue, but I think that people reading the penal code and saying, well, this is what happened. We don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. We just wait for the information to come out. Let's not jump to too many conclusions. It's all going to come out eventually, especially if there's a trial. If there's no trial, then it wasn't that big a deal. And People have been picked up for domestic violence, and they really didn't do that much to anybody. It wasn't a situation where they just started clocking and punching and, beating people up. But it was just a bad situation, and it was unfortunate about what happened, you know. So let's it's a truly sad story though. Knowing Nikki Bella's history, it's an incredibly sad story. AJ3 says your boy Devontae ran about Jerry Lawler on his channel and suggested that he should be Chris Benoit of the wrestling business. I don't I don't know, man. I think that again, there's this assumption that he did it. The thing is, if he had done it, he would be in prison, and he wouldn't have been here in the first place. The state don't drop cases that they can win in situations like that, And then I've seen so many people say, "Well, Jerry Lawler, he's a celebrity. Like this didn't take place in Tennessee; it took place in Kentucky. Which, yeah, he's a big star in Kentucky too. But then he supposedly raped the girls in Indiana. So you're talking about a federal case at this point because he took the girls across state lines. So you got to think about this. Just if you're not going to think about it and actually learn what happened, there's no point in getting too close into it. Again, all I know is a bunch of people read Vixen Span's article and was like, well, this is true, without realizing why it was dropped. Most people don't even know where the crime supposedly occurred, how it was supposedly occurred. And look, when it comes to the Jerry Lawler thing, it doesn't look good. It's just like the Michael Jackson thing, just like the R. Kelly thing. You get jammed up in these situations with young girls and stuff. It don't look good from the start. And even if you beat the case, people still think you did it. So the only thing you can say is I don't even think he was arrested. The charges were filed, he was indicted, but it didn't say he spent any time in jail. And the whole thing, the police did an investigation. And I think the police investigation was pretty good and pretty thorough and had a lot of good points that led you to believe that maybe the girls were telling the truth. At least one of the girls was telling the truth or telling the truth about some things. Not to get too far into it. Again, like I said, I didn't want to litigate this thing. The girls mentioned going to the matches, and he took her from Louisville to Indiana. I forget what the city, Sellersburg, Indiana. And she stayed the night, and she missed school the next day. And then the police actually did look, and she had missed school that day, but she had also missed school other days. So there are some consistencies there that maybe she did go with Jerry and then didn't go to school the next day or whatever the case may be. But of course, you got to ask, where's the parents? If this girl was, the oldest of the girls was 16, the youngest one I think was 13. Who was letting their 13 or 16-year-old daughter go to the wrestling matches by themselves? Like that's kind of, you never really get into the meat of that. Like, where was it? There were no guardians. There were no adults in this situation. This is 1993. I know this is pre 9/11 America, but you want to ask some questions that we never really got an answer to. But for Jerry Lawler, he was interviewed by the police. He admitted to knowing the girls, said that they showed up at his house, and he took them to a store and then took them home. That's what he said. And what he pled guilty to was witness tampering, and they said he was harassing a witness. But what they don't tell you is that he was making phone calls and recording the phone call. So he kept calling people and was recording the phone calls, trying to get them to say that he didn't do it, trying to, trip them up and create evidence and defense for himself. And that's what he got. That's what he pled guilty to. He didn't plead guilty to having sex with the girls. He said he never did it. And the letter that he wrote was in support of the 9 affidavits that he had collected that Vixen Span also read, where Lawler and several other people basically tried to tear into the credibility of the girls, because the only thing you got is the word of the girls, and that was it. So once the girls said that they were not going to testify, the case fell apart. So the girls said it was consensual anyway. Both girls said it. And there's no such thing as consensual sex with a 13-year-old girl. But since nobody is complaining, what can they do? The case was brought by one of the girls' parents, for the record. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Yeah, Robert Jr. is right. The best we could do until there's more information, somebody's gonna get their hands on the police report, and we're gonna get into it then. Ike the Don said, yeah, she should leave if he started it. Do it once, he'll do it again. And next time it could be worse. Yeah, man, like you as a man also, you gotta get away from people who bring that out of you. And look, I treat domestic violence like all forms of violence. Because I know that in our world, men don't hit women and all that kind of stuff, but people can instigate, people can stir shit, and anybody can get it. When I'm looking at something like elder abuse, when you look at somebody that is abusing an older person, and they're like in a nursing home or something like that, that's the kind of thing that triggers me, because that person is basically infirm. They're in a nursing home because they can't take care of themselves. But in a domestic violence situation, you never know what the issue is. She probably started it. She could start it. She could hit him and then he retaliates. She could say something that pisses him off and he launches into a rage. It could have been over the kid. It could have been over the car. We don't know what's happened. That's why in these situations where there's scant information, it's best not to jump to any conclusion. But domestic violence is one of those things that if somebody is willing to bring that out of you and destroy your peace, it's best to get the hell on, male or female. It's best to get out of that situation, because it ain't gonna turn out good. It's gonna mess everybody up. He was accused of shoving and kicking a woman back in 2015. Are we talking about Nikki Bella's wife? I'm sorry, Nikki Bella's wife, Nikki Bella's husband. And it's even sadder that this just happened now, last weekend, when Brian won the world title in London. Not just that. I mean, it's good to that moment to be kind of tampered, but when you consider that their father-in-law got accused of sex trafficking, and now her husband apparently beat her up. This is alleged. This is what presumed to have occurred. This is disturbing, man. It's been a really bad time for the Bellas. Nikki got what she wanted. She wanted to have a baby. She wanted to get married. She wanted to be a wife. John Cena wasn't interested in none of that, it seems. But she got what she was looking for, and now this is the case. I just hope that we're all not jumping to too many conclusions. The problem is now that unless the new information completely and totally exonerates him, this is what his life is going to be from this point on. It's like Jonathan Majors, domestic violence, and what did he do? He pushed the girl to get away from her, and it's like, that's your domestic violence. No black eye, no bruises, no belt, no nothing. Just get away from me, and running the other way, and all of a sudden you lose every job that was lined up for you for several years. But that's the way the wind blows, man. It's unfortunate. Men rarely report DV from their female counterparts and were testified. Yeah, men don't almost never uh, call the police over domestic violence. Almost never, which is what made the Drew McIntyre story so weird. Because he's a really big, tall guy. He wasn't as muscular as he is now. But I think his wife was Taryn Terrell. And she told, I'm trying to remember if she told the story of why she got fired. Because she was in WWE at the time. I don't remember what her version of the events were. But apparently, I think they both had drinking problem or something like that. I know Drew's mom was sick or something. And his career was spiraling out of control. And then I think the domestic violence situation was like the end of it. So that was pretty nasty. But that's the kind of thing you have to look out for when you're in the public eye, getting busted for DV. Getting arrested for anything, really. Getting arrested in general is a problem. All right, so let's talk about Tessa Blanchard, because she also broke the iron law of the internet. This time, she was racist. She was racist, and she was a bully. So we're going to play the audio of Tessa Blanchard talking, and then we'll get into this. Want to make sure you guys can hear it.
I don't want to be in wrestling. I don't fell to the ground like bawling my eyes out. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, I don't want to live this life. I don't want to be in wrestling. I don't want to do this anymore. And like, I was so like, I remember even just like imagining like ways to just end it all. And my ex-husband helped me a lot through some of those moments, but it took a lot of like self-counseling too, talking to other people and just trying to get comfortable and figuring out who Tessa is outside of the wrestling world, outside of the spotlight, out like when all said and done, like we came into this world alone, we're gonna leave this world alone. Like, who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? Where are my boundaries? Where am I gonna say no? What am I okay with? Like all these things, and figuring out how to cope with that anxiety, being comfortable in your own skin. It takes a lot of work, yeah. It fell to the ground.
Okay, that was part of the comment. There was another comment, part of this situation here that I'm going to end up having to read an article, and unfortunately, it's no DQ, which isn't the worst option, but because Ringside News is right there. But so this first line, for those people who are looking at Tessa Blanchard, this first line is crazy. Honestly, when everything happened to me, this happened to me. Not that I was a bitch to everybody I know and has a reputation for being a bitch to everybody I know. This happened to me. You don't understand. This is just the consequences of my own actions. What are you doing? There's no accountability here from Tessa Blanchard. So she says, so honestly, when everything happened to me, it was even a tough topic to talk about. I remember living in Tijuana at the time. I remember some days I would wake up, I didn't even have the strength to live that day. So I would go back to bed and would be in bed all day long. There were days when I was tired about life. Just because my identity was wrestling, I didn't know who I was without it. And in a matter of 24 hours, from contract offers from the biggest companies, more money than I'd ever seen in my life, to nothing. From this whole storyline we had built for 8 or 9 months to me begging TNA office, I don't want to win it. I don't want to do this after I didn't even go home. He says, I went on a 27-day media tour in Mexico where I remember we would pull over in the Uber before every interview and I would vomit. I was just puking and puking because I didn't know. It was whiplash. I didn't know. I was seeing and hearing, and my family, my little brother and sister were reading all these things about me that I knew wasn't me. I knew wasn't in my heart. I wasn't this person, but it didn't matter. Perception's reality, right? The truth doesn't matter. Even the real truth isn't even out there still, and it doesn't matter. But you know, sometimes those things happen because when your feet are pretty far off the ground, when you fall hard. I didn't know my identity without wrestling. And through all of that, through all of these ups and downs, those really hard days that I didn't know if I was going to get through, I found out who Tessa is without wrestling. I went back to college, joined the Army ROTC, and I found out, hey, I'm pretty good at other things too. Wrestling is my dream and I love it. And this is what God put in my life. But without wrestling, I'm going to be okay. There is a life after this. And one day, if I get hurt or this isn't my life, I'm still going to be all right. So and then that was the lead in to the next quote, which we already played the audio to, is where she didn't want to live anymore. But she mentions not wanting to win the TNA world title. And she was telling TNA she didn't want to win it. She didn't want it because the story broke the day she won the title. Like literally the day of her supposed to win the title. The story broke that she was, racist in Japan and was a bully and had a bad attitude and a bunch of other stuff. And she just absolutely got destroyed. And TNA, to their credit, they pushed through. They put the belt on her anyway, which was a dumb move. And then she fucked them by saying, I'm going to stay in Mexico. I ain't coming back to defend the title. And that was it for her in TNA. That was it for her in TNA when they put the belt on her and stood with her despite this allegation. And then she decided she was going to disappear on them, not show up to defend the title, and had to get stripped. That was it. She ended up working for WOW, and then she got called a bully in WOW. So let's take a look at that. I'm doing this one on the fly. Because she was a bully in WOW too, and then we'll get to. So it says that Tessa Blanchard issues between WOW and Tessa Blanchard lead to falling out. This one Fightful. This was 2 years ago. It says via sources that work for WOW in a talent capacity, Fightful has been informed of allegations of issues surrounding Tessa Blanchard and WOW after the brand looked to serve as a rehabilitation project for her. After Blanchard deactivated her social media, Fightful was told WOW sources there had been a lot of fallout between the two sides. It says the issue within verifying information is that many of the people who work for WOW have signed non-disclosure agreements and fear backlash from the company or Blanchard when speaking out. It says one source alleges that in a class in mid-April, Blanchard cut a promo on wrestler Samantha Sage, who is known as Americana. We're told that the promo saw Blanchard tear apart Sage, leading to many trainees speaking up. Per the source, acting classes were canceled from that point until further notice, At least one trainee was told that Blanchard would be less involved moving forward, but that's hardly been confirmed. We reached out to Sage, but didn't hear back. Another source indicated that Tessa Blanchard is no longer in charge of training talent. So she did. She got your boy. She got your boy LA Knight fired from TNA. He had to go slum it in NWA for a while. So, from comicbook.com, it says the report states, and this is from Fightful apparently, the report states that Blanchard is currently not figuring into Wild's plans, though she also hasn't officially been fired or released. Issues have surfaced since January, with the report mentioning one situation where Blanchard was livid about a canceled tryout due to COVID. Blanchard felt it could have happened through Zoom, but CBS made the call to cancel it completely. Lee has been they're talking about AJ Lee, has been in charge at the tapings and worked commentary, but Blanchard did not appear at the tapings. Okay. It says, well, sources in the company say that Wild was able to lure back some who swore they would never work with Blanchard again, though they would end up seeing, quote, more of the same. One source said that at one point the attitude was chalked up to passion among higher-ups. So they repeat the whole thing about this being a rehabilitation program for Tessa Blanchard, and she blew it up. She screwed it up. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what the issues were. It just says a falling out. How are you going to have a Zoom tryout? That's what I'm trying to figure out. How does one have a Zoom tryout? Is it like do 10 push-ups right now on the spot, and I'm going to watch you go up and down on this screen? I don't know. So it's not good. And if you, I watched WoW the season with Tessa Blanchard on it. I watched that on. It's not Tubi. What's the other one? Not Tubi. It's not Tubi. It's Pluto TV. So, and it was actually good. The WoW product fell off a cliff when Tessa left, but that's part of because I think a lot of girls left around that time. But yeah, your boy LA Knight didn't want to work with her, and got himself canned in TNA. Very interesting. All this stuff about Tessa Blanchard keeps coming out. So it's unfortunate because, not many women have as much talent as Tessa, but she seems to be a disaster. I mean, even this whole thing is a disaster, considering she screwed over TNA again when they had her back. And then apparently she also cheated on her husband, and that's why he's her ex-husband. Like, she just seems to be a problem. She inherited the Tully Blanchard issues, huh? I think Tully's problem with the cocaine. I think that was the problem, wasn't it? He liked that nose candy. So she liked that nose. Or did she like the nose candy? So she was 24 in 2020. So she's not even 30 yet. Jesus, can you imagine being completely nuked from orbit and you're not even 30? Like, completely unusable on a wrestling show and not even 30. So Chelsea Green's response. This is one that I want to get to. Glad somebody reminded me of it because I really didn't think too much about it. Chelsea Green responded, I don't wish self-harm or thoughts of suicide on anyone and hope she has found peace. However, a simple I'm sorry goes a long way. We haven't heard that yet. Accountability matters, and a redemption tour of interviews won't erase the actions of an egotistical bully. Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And you know what? In that comment that I read, Tessa said that none of these things were true. So it's not just an issue that, Tessa Blanchard is on an apology tour. She's still denying it. She's still saying it didn't happen. She's still saying that these things are not true. She says, my family and my little brother and sister were reading all these things about me that I knew wasn't me. I knew it wasn't in my heart. I wasn't this person. But it doesn't matter. Perception's reality, right? The truth doesn't matter. Even the real truth isn't even out there still, and it doesn't matter. So the story is that Tessa Blanchard was a horrible bully and racist, and everybody had a really terrible time working with her. And look, Tessa's an issue because she's burned bridges everywhere she's gone. And there's just no two ways about it that, Tessa Blanchard is a problem. It's just no two ways about it. Her marriage fell apart. The company who stood by her ended up having to fire her. Another company looking to save her image had to cut her loose. Like, bro, what is going on? This is like Teddy Hart levels of torching your own career. So Allison Kay, who occasionally works in TNA again, says, remember when you spat in a black woman's face and called her the N-word in Japan? Was that you supporting women? The audacity of this tweet. So this is basically off of Tessa Blanchard trying to be a feminist. Tessa said it was not true. And that, but Black Rose, who was supposedly the victim of these racist rampage, says, if Tessa Blanchard did not remember it, can I? I am not a mean girl with any co-workers around the world. Being kind of #racist is not ridiculous. It's a sickness. And most people have no idea who Black Rose is. But Isla Dawn, who currently is on SmackDown, says, as someone who experienced your bullying firsthand, talking about Tessa Blanchard, received regular verbal abuse, was spat on, had rumors spread about me, dealt with multiple attempts by you to blacklist me from other companies, I just pray you now follow your own advice. So Tessa's one of the most hated girls in the business. And she did it to herself. She did a really good job of ruining her own life. I mean, man, you talk about somebody who crashed and burned. Tessa Blanchard she's girl Teddy Hart, that's for sure. She got everything that you would ask for from a talent, except stability. And there's a time and a place where what she has done wouldn't have mattered, but it absolutely matters now. In 1980 something, it wouldn't have mattered, but today it matters a lot. So she got divorced in last year, 2023. They were married for 3 years. They put out a joint statement, but before the joint statement was put out, Daga had accused her of cheating. He accused her of cheating in January of 2023. I think he accused her of cheating. Yep, January 14th, 2023 on Facebook. But that was 3 days before they announced they were getting divorced. I think they announced they were getting divorced on like the 9th or something like that. Yeah, I'm seeing 9th and 10th. So around that time, they admitted they was getting divorced, and then 4 days later, Daga posted about her cheating. So she nuked her own life, and what more can you do? I think that people who are holding out hope, and there's still some holding out some kind of hope that Tessa Blanchard is going to be able to fix all this. That somebody's going to be able to wave a palm, and all of a sudden, everything negative about Tessa Blanchard is going to go away, and she's going to get a shot to wrestle Charlotte and all this kind of shit in WWE. I just say, man, if it was going to happen, it'd have happened by now. I don't think it's going to happen. And a lot of the girls who don't like her, Chelsea Green is one of them. And again, Isla Dawn is another one. They're still there. And look, I said, maybe CM Punk has proven that you can go home again, that you can have a second chance. That maybe if you just apologize, you can fix these issues. But Tessa, even to this day, still says these things aren't true. So it's amazing to me. So let's get into this Vince McMahon thing as a wrap up. They announced that the Vince McMahon documentary will be coming out. Mr. McMahon will be coming out September 25th. It will be 6 one-hour episodes. The official synopsis is Mr. McMahon chronicles the rise and fall of Vince McMahon, controversial businessman and co-founder of WWE, from his transformation of the WWE from a small regional business into a global entertainment powerhouse, to the explosive sexual misconduct allegations that led to his eventual resignation. This 6-episode series offers a deep dive into McMahon's life and his enduring franchise, culled from over 200 hours of interviews with McMahon himself prior to his resignation, his family members, business associates, and some of the most iconic names in wrestling history, as well as the journalists who uncovered McMahon's allegations. Filmmaker Chris Smith and executive producer Bill Simmons present an unflinching, no-holds-barred look at one of the most enigmatic figures in sports entertainment. This is interesting. And so the director says the goal behind Mr. McMahon was to pull back the curtain and reveal the true Vince McMahon, obscured beneath the persona he presented to the world. Over the 4 years of production, the story evolved in truly shocking ways, culminating in some extremely harrowing allegations. The final product is a revealing documentary that we believe offers a rich and nuanced portrait of the man and the complex legacy he left behind. Interesting. He left like he's dead. He's not dead. He's alive. Vince McMahon is still alive. But everybody wants to talk about how are they going to handle the allegations. Apparently, the Janelle Grant team was not just approached to talk about this, even though they can't talk about it anyway due to ongoing litigation. You don't want to say or do anything that's going to jeopardize your case. So you don't want to do that, and I'm sure Vince is not going to talk about that either. So the issues here are those the only allegations they're going to talk about, which is the ones that people, they say they're going to talk to the journalists from Wall Street Journal that uncovered the NDAs and everything, which is fine. I don't expect them to say more than what they've said already. But are they going to take seriously like the Rita Chatterton stuff? Or how about the Pat Patterson stuff? Clearly, they're going to talk about the Owen Hart scenario. My thing is, I don't know if 6 hours is enough. I don't think 6 hours is enough. I think they're going to need 12. They might need 36, and they might need to do 3-hour episodes for 6 weeks. They might need to do a little bit more. They may need 16 hours or some shit like that in order to fix this. I don't know if 6 hours is going to be able to do it. They may need a little bit more than that. But my guess is it's going to be interesting, and maybe that final hour or so is going to be all sex stuff, the allegations and everything. So it's going to be interesting. The problem that we have here is it can't be brutal enough for some people. So even if it's like when Vice did their documentary, right, the 9 Lives of Vince McMahon or something like that, people said, "Oh, it's going to be an epic takedown. It's created by Dark Side of the Ring. They're going to destroy Vince." It came and went, and nobody really cares about that. I don't even think I did a video on that. It was basically a rehash of all the other Vince McMahon stories that we've heard. So we don't know how bad this one is going to be, but most people think it's going to be some kind of puff piece because Vince and Bill Simmons have a relationship, and WWE and Netflix have a relationship. The thing about Netflix and WWE is this probably would have been an issue 2 years ago before he sold the company. But the higher ups at TKO now, they have every incentive in the world to bury Vince and pretend like and use Vince as a scapegoat to say, "Oh, Vince McMahon, he's always been a problem. He's weird." And then Ari Emanuel, we're not like that over here. We're good old boys over here at Endeavor. They have every impetus in the world to treat Vince McMahon like a scapegoat and let that goat go out to get slaughtered. And then 3 months later, Monday Night Raw is on Netflix, and that'll be that. I would imagine they're going to talk about Black Saturday, but I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time on it. I don't think that kind of stuff interests people anymore. Again, this is about getting to Vince McMahon, the person. And regardless of what people think, getting to Vince McMahon, the person, is very, very difficult because Vince doesn't do a lot of personal interviews. Almost every interview you've seen him do has been either him talking about the company or talking about his talent. Like most of the interviews and stuff that you guys have seen, like when he tried to damn near beat up Bob Costas, that was about wrestling. That was Bob Costas criticizing the product. We don't know who Vince McMahon is as a person, what he believes, what he doesn't believe. He did that really weird Playboy interview, which I think is still the most revealing piece of Vince McMahon material out there. But everybody who takes the time to sit down and write a book about somebody like Vince, they already hate him. So you're not learning anything new. You just see people, take the most critical criticism and take it through their prism of, I already hate this man and you should hate him too. Instead of talking about things fairly and looking at things maybe from Vince's perspective sometimes, or flat out fucking telling the truth. The idea that Vince McMahon killed the territories is nonsense. They were snaking and backstabbing each other the entire time. Vince is just better at it than they were. And then the crazy thing is, Vince bought out several territories, but Jim Crockett bought out just as many, if not more. Like there's a lot of really bad things that Vince McMahon got accused of doing that he picked up from some of these same people who then turned around and cried when it was happening to them. Like I saw people talking about the Owen Hart thing earlier. Like Oh, Vince told him to keep the show going, even though Owen had died and just died in the middle of the ring. It's like Owen died at the hospital. He fell from the ceiling, and I don't think he was dead yet when they carted him out. I think he died at the hospital. So they found out he was dead and announced that he was dead on air, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Now, I know he hit the turnbuckle or something like that, so the likelihood of him surviving was minimal. But it's not like with what the doctor says is that they swept Owen's corpse right out of the way. It wasn't even like that. They didn't know Owen was dead, or that he would die. And then once he died, the show was already continuing at that point. If he died at the hospital, which is what I think, again, I would have to go back and look at the information. I know it was announced while they were still on air, which is likely he could have died during the course of the broadcast. But that didn't mean he died the moment he fell. So it's those kinds of things that people don't take into account. They have these these ideas, these stories floating around in their heads, and there's no two ways about it. Even if you think Vince is like an entertaining person, you gotta believe that he was an asshole. Absolutely. I mean, you gotta be. You gotta be an asshole in this world, brother. Or you let people walk all over you with one or the other. Oh, he didn't let the boys form a union. So what? Who cares? I think the Owen Hart thing is probably one thing that is absolutely, because it was completely unnecessary. How the steroid trial is definitely going to come up. And it's amazing the amount of people who claim they did research on that project, who've written books about the steroids, and Meltzer and all these guys. Oh, Vince was guilty. Oh, really? Was he? The federal government couldn't prove it, but Dave Meltzer, who never left California this entire time, can prove it. Get the fuck out of here, man. It was a simple situation. He did steroids. A lot of the other boys were doing steroids. It doesn't mean that he was involved in any way with them getting steroids. Some of whom were doing steroids before they even came to the WWE. And then you have to take into account a lot of the people who had flipped on him had personal vendettas, like Superstar Billy Graham, and Bruno Sammartino, and Bret Hart, and so many guys like that. And some of these people are like in Jesse Ventura. He has complex relationships with all of these people. But once you get a view of somebody from one's perspective, that's what you think it is. And the media can definitely change your opinion of somebody, even if you think that you know them. And it doesn't take one. Like, I'm surprised Vince lasted as long as he did. Because usually one scandal is enough to take most people out. Vince has been bulletproof for years. I mean, craziest shit comes out about Vince. And people are just kind of like, oh, that old Vince, he's crazy. And that's just it. But it was like there was a concerted effort to bring him down this time, which is how it was an inside job from the shareholders, the shareholders of WWE. It was probably some SJW shareholder, probably Nick Khan himself, that put together this whole Julius Caesar backstabbing on Vince, because it was way too thorough and it was way too effective. Usually, if it was something from the outside, it probably would have bounced right off of him, but it had to come from the inside. But Vince has been a part of so much crazy shit, and we don't know what his personal feelings are on many things. He's talked about his family here and there. The Playboy interview is probably the best thing to look into. when it comes to about his relationship to his mom, his relationship to his stepdad, the situation he grew up in, those kinds of situations. But it's an interesting scenario because there's a lot of people who work with Vince personally who hate him. And then there's a lot of people who work with him personally who love the guy. And you don't think, if you listen to the dirt sheets and dirt sheet writers and everything, they think they know everything. But they don't know. And they have been the people who have been feeding information to the media and painting this collage of who Vince McMahon is for 30 or 40 years now. So whenever somebody else try to come in and find out who Vince McMahon, quote unquote, really is, they run into this wall of, this is what the Wrestling Observer newsletter said. Dave Meltzer, oh God, he talked to Vince a couple of times on the phone, which was probably due to Howard Finkel, because I doubt Vince has ever read a word. I'm reading Jerry Jarrett's book, and Jerry Jarrett claims that Vince McMahon was reading the PW Torch. I'm like, yeah, right. No way. Vince wasn't reading the Torch. You got to be kidding me. Vince McMahon reading Wade Keller. He had one of his stooges reading Wade Keller. But I think the interview he did with Pat McAfee a couple of years ago, right before all this stuff happened, was probably the most calm and normalizing interview he'd ever done. He wasn't in character. He was like a kindly old, wise old man. But again, we don't know who the real person is. There's a crazy story that he's been around all that time, but he's also, it's a weird situation where he's incredibly public as a figure, where his name and face have been everywhere, but he's also incredibly private that so many people didn't even know he had a brother. Like that's a really strange thing. Most people don't even know that he had a stepfather. Most people didn't even know his mom was still alive until she died. So you're like, man, what are we missing out on here? I know they put out a DVD. Oh, it had to be over 10 years ago now. The Mr. McMahon DVD, I still have it. That was supposed to be about, looking at Vince McMahon, the person. And even that was all like, you never know where Vince McMahon ends and Mr. McMahon begins. Because, all those old documentaries, they were good, but there were still bits and pieces of kayfabe in them damn things. Vince's text messages killed his legacy. Maybe. But we don't know what the responses were. I'm just going to say that. The other one was X91, in before Martha Hart is going to be in the doc. I don't think Martha Hart would participate. I don't think she would participate because it's another one of those things where I said earlier, Martha Hart is not interested in any kind of alternate narrative compared to the one that she's already put out there. The alternate narrative is that, again, you need to read the police report about what happened to Owen. Once I read the police report, I was like, damn, there's nothing you can read, and there's nothing that you can consume in terms of entertainment that will prevent it from being sad. But once you realize it was a fucking freak accident, then you say, okay, she was right to sue the company. And she's even right to hate wrestling and hate WWE. I mean, it is what it is. But the idea that, he was some kind of callous businessman who was out to cut corners and all this kind of stuff, it's like you have to actually read a little bit more about this than what she said. Because people think that the other side also doesn't create propaganda. And they do. Both sides have propaganda. You just have to look at, okay, what's the honest piece here and there. Like the Dungeon book does a really good job of getting all sides of the story about the death of Owen Hart. You get Martha Hart, she didn't even participate in that book, but the writer of the book read her book, and they talked to her sisters-in-laws and brothers-in-laws and all of them and got their side of the story. Martha has cocooned herself and her children, and she does not entertain any alternate tellings of the story. That's why when she did Dark Side of the Ring, she did some kind of partnership with Dark Side of the Ring that they didn't tell anybody about until it was over. And there were no other Harts in it, because all the other Harts were saying, Martha, it was an accident. We're all sad. This is our brother. This is our son. But we're not going to destroy the WWF because you're angry at them. You know, they admitted fault, because how could they not admit fault? But it wasn't just their fault. They were also lied to by the manufacturers of the materials that they were using. And the rigger exaggerated his experience with the device. And then ultimately, the device was tested several times before Owen went up to the ceiling. So there's so much there that most people have no idea, because they got their information from biased sources. Those biased sources being Martha Hart, Dark Side of the Ring, etc. It's like, how many people have read the police report? It's like when I was talking about Jerry the King Lawler, right, earlier. How many people have read the police report and can tell you what's in it? The police report walks you through the investigation. There were even people in the building who said they saw somebody push Owen Hart from the ceiling. And we know that's not true. So it's like, there's so many different things that goes into these stories. If you're going to talk about criminal and legal shit, you got to actually read this stuff. You can't just read somebody's summary of it, especially since you know that person probably hates the subjects anyway, hates one of the subjects at least. Like, how many people know that WWE actually sued the company that made the rig? And that's how they was able, for starters, Martha wanted like $34 million. She only got 17. Why? And then of that 17, WWE paid her all 17 of those dollars or something like that. But they got half their money back from the rigging company because they sued their asses. But again, these things are nuanced. They're complex. Most people just have not done the research, didn't look into it. And then sometimes people do the research, like Vixen Span. He does the research. He at least does that. He will provide sources. But then he'll come to some kind of skewed conclusion because he hates one side of the argument. So instead of just presenting the information as, this is what occurred, this is what I read, it becomes, I read this, but it was kind of like blah, blah. Like, no, get the fuck out of here, brother. The Biz says, I think that the issue is that Vince and the WWE created a culture where you only succeeded if you did steroids and looked a certain way. That's the issue. Okay, maybe that's the case, but that has nothing to do with him trafficking steroids, which is what he got arrested for. I mean, that literally, if you say, I'm only going to push blondes, you're not forcing anybody to be a blonde. Like, you're not, most of those people, Randy Savage being another one, doing steroids before he came to WWF. Because he was a bodybuilder. Like, so many of those guys was doing steroids. They already had regular, they was just getting them from a specific doctor at this point. And the crazy thing about it is, and this is the most humorous thing about it, is that the WWF supposedly went clean, and that's why they gave the belt to Bret. But Bret had done steroids. That's the goddamn thing about it that blew my mind. The only champion at that time that didn't do steroids was Nash, I think. I think Nash was legit clean. Shawn had got busted for steroids. Bret had got busted for steroids. Undertaker didn't, as far as I know. So, but the first in that era might have been Undertaker and never took steroids. And Andre the Giant, clearly he didn't need it. For God's sake, he's massive. But Andre and Undertaker were probably the only two guys out of that entire era who became the world champion and didn't do steroids. And then after that, Shawn had got busted for it. Bret admitted it in his book. And Flair had also admitted to using steroids, if I remember correctly. I don't know about Sid. I don't know about Austin either. Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know. And I don't know about The Rock. Even though I know The Rock takes steroids nowadays, I don't know if he was taking them then. So you can make the argument that it was a culture of you need to have a certain look. But a lot of those guys had to look. Like you look at somebody like Rick Rude, who took the stand and talked about taking steroids. Look at Rick Rude in Texas. He wasn't as shredded as he was in WWF. Honestly, he probably upped his cycle. But he looked like he took steroids. Mr. Perfect, he's almost doubled in size. So it was almost like a Eddie Guerrero thing with Kurt Hennig. But not as drastic as Eddie. He was kind of he was always he was like wide. Like when you go back and watch like Mr. Perfect, like in the early 90s, and his chest is like bulging out, and he used to walk with this waddle, like this cocky stride that he used to have. But it was almost like he couldn't put his arms down to his side. Like he was huge. Of course, he wasn't, Macho Man huge. Macho Man was nuts. Macho Man, Savage, and Hogan went full born with it. All right. But yeah, there's almost everybody around that time was taking steroids. Cornette and JR should be a part of this. I'm pretty sure JR is going to be a part of it. JR has to be. JR worked there for too long for him not to be a part of it. Cornette, I think Cornette would have said something if he was asked to be a part of this. He probably would have said something by now. My thing is, did they talk to people in the office? That's what I want to know. Like some of those people who have been around, skulking around WWF for years, like the Kevin Dunns and those kinds of people. Like those folks who are around for a really long time. I wonder if he talked to them. I wonder if Linda is in the documentary. Cornette, Bischoff, Russo, Heyman have all been both incredibly critical and nice about Vince. There's enough of either view of a documentary. Yeah, but the thing is, most people have no interest in the positives. They're only interested in the negatives. And just about everybody, you can get positive stories and negative stories about everybody. I mean, that's just human nature. But wrestling fans have decided that their version of Hitler, their version of Satan is Vince McMahon. And anything positive must be destroyed or rebuked. And the idea that he did anything positive must be destroyed or rebuked. And that's really what's going to make this 6-part documentary very, very interesting, because they have to glorify him a little bit. Even if they destroy him in the later episodes, which they might, the first episodes at least are going to be how Vince changed the business. And they already have tried to destroy that narrative. Like there's not much you can do except sit back and laugh. WWE TNA full. I guess, interesting. Vince fixing to go out like O.J. Simpson. People hoping he died miserably, but him not giving a fuck. Yeah, that's kind of how he came across, like when he did the Pat McAfee document talk. Because he talks about how, people hate him and think he's an asshole, and he just doesn't care. Like, he doesn't use social media, except to wish people happy birthday. He seems to stop doing that. He disappeared from public life to handle this situation that he's going through right now. But he doesn't seem to care. It's not like he was, and it would have been shocking if he tried to go out like R. Kelly. Like R. Kelly did to sit down with Gayle King and, use your common sense. Why would a hog tie? Like something like that. No, he's not about to do nothing like that. He's not about to go out like Michael Jackson, who does these sit down. Maybe if I talk to the media, they'll listen to me. They don't. They already made up their minds. They got their narratives that they're running with, and that's that. You do your thing in court. That's where you do your talking. And that's where it's going to get interesting. Like, this documentary is going to be interesting as hell. It ain't going to be as interesting as whatever they start doing next year. If he's still around long enough, if he lives long enough to get through this Janelle Grant thing, that's going to be the story of a lifetime. That's going to be something special right there. Dennis King, glad I brought up Owen. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation when they talk about Owen Hart. Because it's one of those things that makes Vince sound like he was cold and evil. But it's like, in a football game, if a guy didn't they continue the football game after the guy supposedly had like a heart attack or something like that on the field? Well, they've completed football games where guys have had concussions and have been carried out on a stretcher. They don't know if the guy's going to die or not. They continue the game. A guy gets hurt. If he dies later on, what do you do? They finish movies. They finished The Crow after, Jason Lee got killed on set. That didn't they just kill a girl? Like, they killed a girl on set on a movie like a year or two ago. They finished the fucking movie and the movie came out. Like, you already invested money in this situation. I don't know what people think in terms of you have to stop everything and everything has to end. It just doesn't seem reasonable, especially considering I don't really know like the details of when Owen passed away. But I'm pretty sure he passed away during the midst of the show continuing. They just skipped his match. DeBiz says the tipping point for me was Brett saying Owen did not want to do it and others saying it was not necessary. It was both of those things. Like Owen didn't want to do it. He didn't want to be the Blue Blazer at all. I mean, that part is true. And it was completely unnecessary. I don't know why he needed to ever come from the rafters. But it wasn't the first time he'd done it. So it wasn't like it was a novel thing for him to do. And so both of those things are true. I don't think he wanted to do it. And I certainly don't think it was necessary. But if you read the police report, Owen was comfortable with doing it because he had practiced it. And he had done it before. Secondly, they had been practicing it that morning. They had used a 250-pound sandbag on that same clip that Martha Hart told you broke because of his body weight, which is false. They used a sandbag that was heavier than Owen. And it didn't break. It didn't come apart. The issue was the latch. When the real issue was the cape. Once they put the cape on Owen, it was uncomfortable. He had to adjust the cape. When he adjusted the cape, he mistakenly hit the latch and it came loose, and that's how he fell. That's the story. It's boring. It was an accident. He wasn't pushed. He wasn't murdered. It wasn't anything the rigger did wrong. It was Owen Hart was not wearing the cape when he was practicing it. When he practiced it with the cape on, or when he tried to do it in real time with the cape on, it was uncomfortable. And he tried to adjust his cape. And in trying to adjust his cape, he unlatched it. Because it was meant to be unlatched quickly. But he didn't know that it was going to come loose that quick, that easily. And he fell. These kinds of things happen in like construction and shit all the time. That's why you say it's unnecessary. It's pro wrestling. He never need to be up there. But just because this shit happened doesn't mean that he was set up to fail. It was piss poor planning. You have to practice how you play. All this stuff that they were doing in the practice, they did something different when it was game time. Because he did not practice with the cape on. And this is what the police said. Because they did it. They recreated it with the same clip or the same kind of clip. However they went. They did it with the sandbags. They did it with a man who was about around the same size as Owen. And then they put the cape on the guy, and they found that if you adjust the mask or the neck thing on the cape, it's coming loose. And that's what happened. It's in the police report. People act like I'm making this shit up. It's in the police report. It's an accident. Nobody says you have to get over it. But you got to stop lying about it. You got to stop twisting shit. You can still say it's a tragedy while saying, you can also say it's completely unnecessary, and why would you do a stupid stunt like that anyway? Absolutely, why do a stupid stunt like that? Especially since the match didn't ever need for Owen to come from the ceiling. For fucking what? But the story that Martha is putting out there is that Owen was in control of the latch and all this kind of thing. It's like, no, he wasn't. He wasn't put in control of anything. He didn't know that the thing was going to come loose. Hell, the guy who put it on him didn't know it was going to come loose. But at the same time, it's what they wanted. Because they wanted it to look like Sting. That was the idea. And that was why the guy got the job. Not because they were cutting corners, but because the guy told WWE he had helped rig Sting. There were multiple guys that WWE reached out to who said, yeah, I did the rigging for Sting. One of them was too expensive. So they say, I'm not going to go with that. We're going to go with another guy who claimed he was on that same squad. Now, he might have been exaggerating, which I think they came up to, that he was exaggerating about his experience in doing that, which is the guy, the rigger's fault, him being a liar. But ultimately, that was the plan. And it was even worse because the story is that Max Manning was supposed to be on the clip with him. They were going to have Owen and a midget come from the ceiling. That was the original idea. I don't even understand where the midget came from. The bid says Brett 100% admitted in his book, but did say he did it because that was what he felt was holding him back. Stone Cold did steroids with Sting early on. I don't know, man. Stunning Steve Austin didn't look that jacked. But then again, people do steroids and they never really change how they look. You know, Steve Austin was a lot more built in his later years, which, you know, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did like human growth hormone or something like that to come back from those neck injuries. He was probably taking something because he kept coming back from those neck injuries a little too quick. WG Phil says, I do hope it's not a full-on slam job like Michael's Martin Bashir. That's an interesting scenario. I don't think it's going to be that bad because Bill Simmons has a soft spot for Vince. So I think it's going to be fair, but I don't think it's going to satisfy everybody who wants blood. You're going to have to get that when they open up the Discovery and they start going through all of that shit. That's when you going to start getting your real information. Because they look like they're going to go to trial or whatever they call it, because nobody's trying to get any kind of settlement going. And maybe there's going to be a settlement. I don't know. But I doubt this Janelle Grant thing ends in a settlement. It'll probably end up in a settlement if Vince dies. Like if Vince croaks tomorrow or something like that, his estate will probably settle with her and then call it a day. But as long as Vince is alive, this thing's probably going to trial. Vince is the father of modern day wrestling and sports entertainment. That is an undisputed fact. His place in history is set in that way. His ending is also set, unfortunately. Maybe after the Vince documentary is going to pull a P. Diddy move and get on a plane and disappear. I think he's already disappeared. There was no pictures of his birthday party this year. So he's already vanished. Damar Hamlin did have a heart attack, apparently getting the coof. The movie you're talking about is Russ with Alec Baldwin. Yeah, and the young lady got shot on set. And they finished the movie. They just came back later and finished it. And was like, well, I know people think that stuff's kind of cold-blooded and cold-hearted, but people look at things differently. That would be like saying, okay, Toriyama passed away. We're just going to throw Dragon Ball Daima in the garbage. We're not going to finish it because Toriyama died. Everybody be looking at you like, what the fuck is your problem? Finish that thing and put it out. Like maybe people are saying don't create nothing new, but he worked on that. Put it out. So I think it's just an American thing, probably. We take things that we invested in very seriously. It might be cultural. X9 says, imagine how amazing it would have been if Denise Salcedo, voice of wrestling, Jim Valley, and all other stooges. Everybody hates Denise. Denise does not try to be a legitimate wrestling journalist, so I'll give her credit. She likes to have fun with the wrestlers and ask some silly questions. There's a lane for people like that. Not everybody has to try to be Brandon Thurston and break down the business metrics and all that horse shit. Not everybody's going to do that, So she wants to go out there and play rock, paper, scissors with Braun Breaker or whatever. Who cares? Said when Hamlin had cardiac arrest, the NFL stopped the game. Vince and Shaw did the stunt 3 years prior. It wasn't Undertaker did it in '96 too. Owen even had done it. Owen had did the blue blazer gimmick I think a couple of weeks before this time he was supposed to do it. So it wasn't even the first time he done it. It wasn't the first time anybody's done it. It's never really needed to be done ever. You never really need to ever rig somebody from the ceiling. And maybe it's my fear of heights, but I don't ever need to be rigged to the ceiling. I never would have done that. And I was scared of heights before what happened to Owen. Every time I hear about a plane crash or somebody falling at a construction site, that's why I quit the construction jobs that I had. It was like, oh, you can make so much money being a roofer. I saw somebody fall off a roof. Like he was sitting up there, I don't know what he was eating, potato chips or something like that. He just slid off the side of that roof. I was like, oh, hell no. I ain't going up there. Or something really bad happens, like the ladder falls. Like the ladder tilts over, and he just stuck on the roof. Fuck that. No way. I'm not doing that. The biz says I heard Brett and Undertaker both say that several people adjusted both the costume and the harness. So it's never been proven that it was just Owen. Mary said WWE people adjusted it. It was an accident. There's a lot of information floating around. All I can say is in the police report, the police talked about trying to recreate it because they wanted to know if it was a homicide, because they had heard that Owen had been pushed and all that kind of stuff. So they wanted to know what it was. And when they recreated the accident, what they realized was Owen was not wearing the cape. So when he wore the cape, it was tight around his neck and might have been choking him. And he tried to move it around and it came loose. Now, was it the same clip that they had used? Now, for starters, when they did it with Shawn, it was around the lower body. It wasn't around the neck and the back, right? With Undertaker, it was around the neck and the back, but it wasn't like Sting where he could just click it and it comes loose. Because, Undertaker was like, and then they did it with Owen before, and it was the same thing. It was just like Undertaker. He was so secure that it took a while to get him out of the rig. They wanted it to be a quick release, and that was the problem. I still don't like the idea of dangling somebody over the roof. From the roof. I still don't like that. But it was the idea that they tried to imitate the Sting thing that really ended up causing the bulk of the problems. Dennis King said these are things that people don't talk about when it comes to the Owen tragedy. Yeah. It was also it was so unnecessary, bro. Like, I remember I wasn't even watching the pay-per-view when it happened. I was laying in bed wondering what was going on the pay-per-view because I was too broke to order it. And it popped up on like ESPN or MTV or something like that. It was almost the same thing that happened with Aaliyah. Like, I was watching music videos or something like that. Then all of a sudden there it was. I was like, oh boy, that sucked ass. And the weird thing is I had an Owen Hart poster on the wall that I had gotten from WWF magazine. And I wrote a little something on there and with his name and with his birthday and the day that he died and everything. And that poster, I left it when I left that house. But I would have loved to have had that poster today. But I don't have it anymore, obviously. You think Vince is going to wear a neck brace for old times? He might show up in a wheelchair. I think Vince is going to show up to all the legal proceedings with a breathing machine on, like in Casino, where all the old guys showed up with the gas tanks. Vince is going to show up in a blue suit on oxygen. And everybody's going to be like, what the hell, Vince? Like, are you dying? That neck brace was a motherfucker, wasn't it? Oh my God. Over the Edge is just a mid-show as well. That's the amazing thing. Yeah, I mean, that's the sad part. It wasn't like WrestleMania or some big show. This was Over the Edge. Like, you didn't need to go through. You didn't know to go. You need to go that hard for this show. And that's the only thing that the show is known for. It's not known for any match, segment, going into the show or coming out of it. All it's known for is that's the night that Owen Hart fell from the ceiling. That's fucked up. If Owen Hart had not fell from the ceiling, that show wouldn't be known for anything. It'd be just like most of the other Attitude Era pay-per-views that's known for nothing. Vince is going to show up to court at crutches and a neck brace. I'm telling you, if he was smart, he'd have a whole oxygen tank on. He'd have a blood pressure cuff on and everything, bro. He should come in there just looking bold and old every single time. But Vince might be the kind of dude this time might pull up Michael Jackson, jump on the roof of a car and start flexing. That would be terrible optics. That would be awful optics. But something tells me that they're probably just going to drain his finances a little bit, and they're going to just claim that they're investigating. Then he's going to fuck around and die, and everything's going to go away. And then they're going to be like, "Oh, we had him. We were so close," like they did with Jimmy Snuka. We were so close. We had him this time, guys. Well, guess we got to let it go. And then everybody's going to be like, "He died before he got justice." I'm like, okay. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Vince is going to die before all this shit is over with. Because if he comes out the other side and he's not in prison and he beat that case, he goes to a whole new level of deification if he manages to escape this whole thing. And there's so much to wade through. I don't think he's not going to beat everything. But you would think that if the guys got federal sex trafficking charges, they would have found something by now. They've been doing this shit for over a year. Combing through, well, they are still combing through his phone records and emails and all this stuff. So who knows how long it takes to go through all that shit. Didn't Undertaker beat Steve Austin at Over the Edge for the WWF title that night? I have no idea, bro. I don't remember what the fuck happened to that show outside of Owen fell from the roof, dog. I don't know what else happened on that show. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Those Attitude Era pay-per-views are worthless to me. I don't even go back and I don't even enjoy watching them, really. Like I said, I watched SummerSlam 99 the other day. It was pointless. What a terrible show that was, man. It was an awful, awful show. From top to bottom, it was just bad. I even didn't like the main event. I didn't like anything about that fucking show. You know, it was Rock and Billy Gunn, for God's sake. That's what they managed to do. He says his mom lived to be 100. Well, his mom didn't take steroids and get hit in the head with steel chairs. So I'm surprised Vince had not had a heart attack or a stroke or something like that yet. You know, usually a guy his age would have had a couple of those. You know, especially, but he seems to live without, except the steroids, he seemed to live pretty clean. So you never heard about Vince having a stroke, never heard about him having a heart attack. You never even hear about him like having a toothache, which is why, you know, the neck brace things, you know, stands out so much, and him blowing his quads. Because like those are like the only legitimate injuries you can see Vince McMahon ever having. You would think as he got older, his health would start to fail, and maybe his mental faculty started to fail a little bit. That just comes with age. But physically, he never really heard about like Vince had a stroke, and you know, because people half his age was having heart attacks. Do you think the documentary is going to bring up John Laurinaitis? I think eventually he has to, because he's involved with the sex trafficking thing, and they're going to talk about it. So I'm imagining they're going to bring him up. My thing is, if you're going to talk about it, don't be afraid of it. Just go right after it. That's kind of how my view of it is. Too many people want to cover these subjects, and they want to cover them in a gentle way. That's why you know sometimes you don't hear things that you probably should. You know, my thing is, if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. And that's why I don't think the lawsuit papers and all that kind of shit is the end all be all of it. Like, if you want to talk about this shit, let's talk about it, bro. You know, let's put everything on the table. Don't tell me the baby face side of it, because again, the real story comes out in court. Because I can tell you right now, as soon as I heard that girl, I was asking questions. You know, y'all know me. I asked questions the first time I heard about it. Like, how was she living in the same building with a rich boyfriend? I'm like, okay, well, now I'm suspicious about everything. You know? So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. If the old bastard really did do some evil shit, the government is incentivized to catch him. I think all these people who are wondering if Trump will pardon him and all that kind of shit, man, I wouldn't be too concerned about that unless he's legitimately arrested. Now, what they might do, and this might be politically convenient, is that if Trump wins, they'll decide we don't have enough evidence to charge him with sex trafficking. And then it would be Trump Trump did this. Trump got Vince out of this situation. They're best buds. They're like brothers. Like, that's convenient. Vince lived his life to the fullest. When it's all said and done, that's for damn sure. Yeah, I mean, he had a blast. He seemed to have one hell of a life, man. But as usual, he pissed off the wrong people, and they're putting him through hell right now. He'll never be completely clean to everybody because they always think he did something. That's just like, Michael Jackson. He beat the case, and people was like, well, what about that? What about Jordan Chandler? It's like, well, that kid never said he got raped either. That was that kid's parents. And then we found out that was a setup. It was all bullshit. It's like I need to stop grouping Michael Jackson and R. Kelly together because R. Kelly's ass was guilty. Diddy's ass is guilty. And I knew they were guilty without evidence. You could just look. For starters, again, R. Kelly dated a young woman and was married to her while she was underage. So yes, he was guilty. But Jerry Lawler is in that same category. You could take it or leave it. And I even break my own rules sometimes, man. I'm one of those innocent until proven guilty people. I am. But I think Jimmy Snuka did that shit. I just don't think it worked out the way people think it did. I think she died from the injury she probably suffered a couple of days before. Well, I think a week or so before. Because remember, he wigged out on steroids about a week or two before she died. I'm talking about Aunt Nancy Argentino. And he had bashed her head against the wall. And he was high on coke. That's when he started getting in a fight with the police and all this kind of stuff. I don't think he did anything to her that night and she died. I think that she probably had suffered a severe head injury and she died from that, but she just died later on. But there's really no other explanation when it comes to Jimmy Snuka. And R. Kelly, I believe he did it before they even put him in prison. For obvious reasons. And I always knew Diddy was the same too. Diddy, yeah, absolutely. That nigga in jail. All right, y'all. Thanks for everybody for stopping by. I appreciate it. We're going to talk to you guys next time. Robert Jr. asked the important question whether Shane and Stephanie are going to be in it. I definitely think they will be. I don't see why they wouldn't be. It seemed to me like they would be important elements to put into this documentary. But I think that's really what I want is Shane and Stephanie's response and what they think about all of the situations that he's been in. And I'm also interested in whether they're going to approach the Rita Chatterton situation. Because it's interesting. Like, I don't know if anybody has ever asked Vince McMahon about Pat Patterson. Like, all we know is Pat was accused, Vince sent him home, and then once they kind of cleared up that Pat had not really done anything, or they couldn't prove that Pat had done anything, Pat came back, and that was it. But again, there's been so many situations, and the crazy thing is, because I was about to wrap it up, so I turned on one of the last 3 Saturday Night's main events I got to watch left. There's only 3 of them left, and they're all in the 2000s. But Ashley Massaro was on TV because she's the ring announcer for John Cena versus the Great Khali for some reason. And I was thinking maybe they're going to bring this up too. Are they going to bring this up too in the scandal section of Vince McMahon versus women? Like Vince McMahon knew that Ashley Massaro was raped in Dubai and did nothing. I don't know, man. But it's a nasty, nasty, nasty scenario. And I'm interested in what his family thinks about these situations. I probably should have checked to see if his brother had passed away yet. before all of these things happened. And I think his brother died before all of this stuff came out. Because I would be very interested in knowing what he thinks about all this shit. All right. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.